Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Plant-Based Transformation Summit, our third annual summit. My name is Margot Freitag, and I am your host. I'm so excited to bring to you the most current information about the ultimate solution to the vast majority of our health issues, our weight issues, and our vitality. And that, of course, is a whole foods plant-based diet. And today I am super excited to introduce you to one of my favorite people, Lani Muelrath. Lani is this beautiful example of plant-based living and a tremendous resource for anyone looking for change toward healthier and happier living. She's a vegan lifestyle coach, an award-winning author and teacher, and Lani coaches people into healthy living with plant-based nutrition as the guiding force. Lani's latest book, Mindful Vegan, is truly a unique work. While Lani's work helps make transitioning to better health joyful and doable, the Mindful Vegan helps us to get centered and present as we take this journey into a higher version of ourselves. Welcome, Lani. Thank you so much for being here.
Margot, I'm honored to be part of your program again. Always a pleasure, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, that's great. I'm thrilled that you're here. So, Lani, I want to dive right in. We only have half an hour, and I want to get as much out of this as we can. Yeah. I'd like to find out as much, whatever you can share with us about the Mindful Vegan. I think it's really timely and so important for our audience. So let's dive right in. Can you tell us about the Mindful Vegan? What led you to writing this?
Here she is. And the Mindful Vegan is actually a part of, she's my third book. And my first book was about fitness, which was one of my areas of expertise. And the second one about plant-based nutrition and making that transition. But the third leg, the Mindful Vegan, actually teaches what made the difference for me in bringing all of the knowledge I had about human health and how to be healthier through how you move and how you eat, through having some degree of mastery over how you think. So as a person who, I became vegetarian like 45 years ago and eventually vegan, but for many of those years, as I've told you about before, Margot, I really struggled with this war with food eating in my body, and it played itself out in a seesawing weight and all that struggle that's very familiar to any of us that are over 30 years old. It seems to be common to our experience. And it didn't seem to matter what I put into place until I took up a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice allowed me to kind of get beneath the surface of the way this war, as I call it, played itself out with micromanaging my diet, trying to figure out what the right way was to eat, and dealing with the vicissitudes or ups and downs of life in a more direct way, rather than taking refuge, which for me was in food and eating or coming up with the next great diet.
Right.
By getting under the surface of these things, it brought me a new sense of freedom. And this was 25 years ago that I started this practice. At that very time, I overcame this problem. I restored this joy of food and eating, relationship with my body. I eventually dropped 40 pounds that I've stayed off for 20 years because I was no longer going through this problematic, relationship. So this is why I'm so excited to bring this forward and actually teach the tools that were so transformative for me in bringing all the best of plant-based living to reality.
So great. So it's a tool for so many things, not just a vegan diet, but for weight control and for so many other things. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. First, I'd like you to tell us about the trilogy. You know what I'm talking about.
That I refer to, yes.
Your three books, and they're sequential. It's really in a very naturally perfect order. So,
well, thank you. Yeah. Well, my first book was here she is. I've got them all here. Was Fit Quickies. This was like about 2013, I believe, and I had developed a series of short 5-minute targeted workouts for strength training, because people have busy lives and are always saying, I don't have time to go to the gym. Well, you don't need to take big chunks of time. You can work in small movements throughout the day. And as my master's degree was in physical education and exercise science, I was able to draw on all the research about what are the best moves for getting strength training in a short amount of time, by how you hold yourself and by how you develop the repetitions. And then from there, you know, when I wrote this book, and Penguin Publishing approached me and said, well, we really would like to do a book about your 5-minute exercises. Well, I wasn't going to say no, but I said, you know what? It also has to include 2 other elements, even in part of the book. It has to include plant-based nutrition, and it has to include a reference to some degree of mindfulness or mindset mastery, because otherwise it's really not an honest presentation of what transformation is. And they said yes, so that was fine from there. Then the second book, it was time for the second book. And this was a couple of years ago. And that was the plant-based journey that I've been able to talk about you before. And this is a step-by-step guide for actually transitioning to plant-based nutrition. There's 5 universal steps, universal to everyone, whether you change overnight or over time. So now I had the first 2 steps, but I also insisted this book had to have reference to exercise, physical fitness, and getting some degree of mastery over habits of thinking. So now we're all set for door number 3. And that's why I'm so happy that now I could really focus on, I needed a whole book to be able to do this, to teach how to do this very simple practice that gets under the surface of our challenges and most difficult problems. So there you have it. Now I got all 3 legs.
Beautiful. Now you mentioned something that's really interesting, and I think it deserves some attention. There's a lot of talk about mindset and mindset mastery these days, and there's also a lot of talk about mindfulness. So can you distinguish between both?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad to hear you ask that question, Margot. How is it that you're always so perceptive and right on the mark? I don't know. You just have a way of drawing out the key information, because it points out something very important. And people do confuse this mindset. I've got to get my mindset together. And then there's the word mindfulness. What does that mean? Am I full of my mind? The difference that I see between the two is mindset is that you're set in a way, and I'm going to do XYZ no matter what. And then you pool all your resources, all your resolve, all your willpower, your won't power, and you try to forge ahead that way. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is actually, it's not being full of your mind. It's learning and training your brain how to be fully present with whatever it is that you are doing in the moment. And as I go into this in great depth, of course, in the Mindful Vegan, there are many advantages to this. For one, you have major reductions in reactivity. It's powerful for stress management. It's being used for everything from treating anxiety to skin problems to smoking cessation to alcoholism to binge eating, because instead of getting derailed with our habits of thinking, which is just running with every thought that comes to our mind, which is our usual practice, we haven't been trained how to say, well, I think I'll just not go with that thought right now and be present with what I'm doing. Right. So it's no wonder we're in this mess. And when we let our minds keep hijacking our attention, as it were, this leads us into, I'm giving a short, concise lesson here. It brings us into areas of our brain where also reside anxiety and sadness and depression and even cravings and addictions. So by getting some degree of mastery over choice of which thoughts to follow, when's an appropriate time to go with an idea, then you are able to better manage the reactivity, and also cultivate a release and opening of positive brain states such as equanimity, calm, poise, joy, compassion. They're all there. They just are getting covered up by all our mental activity.
Right. Right. So it's really very much about taking action in our lives, instead of just going through the day reacting to the next thing, the next stimulus.
You know, and everything, we're always taking an action in one way or other, right?
Right.
If we are being in reactivity, we're still choosing to take that action by default of the fact that we haven't made another choice. Right. So as you continue these mindfulness practice, it becomes increasingly clear that we do have some choice in the matter, which is why my first chapter is called Freedom, because when you learn how to open that space around running with a thought or your reactivity, which is how we spend most of our day, reacting to a person, place, thing, thought, idea, traffic, you know, all of these things, we're just in reactivity. You expand that space so you start to have some choice. And instead of being caught up in these negative reactive brain states, you're able to stay more present with whatever it is that you are engaged in at the time, and keeping a much better sense of well-being.
Lani, why is this idea of mindfulness so suitable for today's culture, and especially for those transitioning to a sort of a higher state of themselves and an evolution?
Yeah, that's a great idea to explore, because kind of bringing it into the present time, even the mindfulness practice and mindfulness meditation is thousands of years old. Each millennium has its own challenges, right? And our times right now are designed for distraction. Social media is built on a distraction platform. You notice if anyone has ever gone through a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed or their Twitter feed, your attention is constantly being grabbed here and there. And in a way, it's very stimulating, because every time we get a new idea, you get a little spark of biochemically, your interest is raised. And maybe somebody said something good about you or something bad about you, and it all congeals with reactivity. So we have more of an onslaught with the media, with our faster paced culture, with the crowds that we are facing more of the time. There's just a lot more people on the planet. There's a lot more options. It acts as an antidote to all of this. And in terms of making a transition, just as in every other realm, if you're looking at the dietary realm or your relationship with food realm, is not this an area, Margot, I'm sure you'd agree, a highly charged environment? Absolutely. It seems like talking about food and diet, whether we all have our own personal histories with it, or all the fights in the media about paleo versus plant-based versus all of these ideas. Right. And they can all seek to ply our attention, and look at how many people jump from one to another because they've gotten better marketed to by one of them, perhaps. And then people will just spend endless time saying, which is the best choice for me, and spend all their time in the debate. If you can step back, actually take an overview of what the predominant forces in the research are. And we all know that the only dietary plan that has been proven to reverse heart disease is plant-based nutrition. So should not that be the default diet? And then take enough time to just learn some of the basics and move forward. But the mindfulness practice will allow you to avoid getting caught up in all the momentary pulls and the bells and whistles that might be jerking you around so you never really get started. I've had many clients who've come to me saying, I don't even know what the best kind of plant-based diet is to eat. I spend hours every day reading all the forums, and I go, well, the first thing is, let's see if we can get some mastery over that. You're spending your time in distraction. So that's just a small way that it can help.
Interesting. And this just came to mind, and it comes to me a lot. I think about this a lot. I wonder how somebody can be truly mindful of what they're eating without considering what had to happen for their food to get to their plate. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about, if somebody's eating meat, how can you practice mindfulness around, around that without really being cognizant of
I know.
Of what happened before.
You've probably, and many of the viewers here on this program have seen or read books about mindful eating, as I have, and not a one of them address just what you said. Let's have some consideration of who or what is on your plate, how it got there, some mindfulness of the impact of that food on your health, on the health of the planet, its impact on the other beings with whom we share our planet. This is all part of eating mindfully. It's not just making sure you chew your food a certain amount of times and give thanks, whatever that means. To me, giving thanks means just what you said. Let's have some appreciation and awareness of it. And what role do we play in our planetary disasters? Let's be mindful of that.
Right.
And it's so easy to make other choices. We've got the instructions.
Right.
The program that guides people so beautifully. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I also know that this can help not just around food. It can help in so many other areas of our lives. You've talked about smoking cessation and alcohol abuse. Can you touch on that? Speak to that?
Yeah, I think that one reason that, especially in the Mindful Vegan, that I approach the beauties and the value of mindfulness practice through the door of food and eating is because that was the canary in my coal mine.
Right.
I was, as I mentioned earlier, I had this long-standing disturbed relationship between food and eating, my weight, all of that kind of stuff. And everyone has a different canary in their coal mine. For many people viewing, I bet the food realm is one of them. For other, it might be their overachievement bone that has them working overtime at work, just addicted to projects, can't let go of work. Some people become addicted to an exercise plan. Some people zone out online or shop online. It's kind of like a way of taking refuge in something that we all have a certain level of anxiety just as part of the human experience, as part of our biology to be on guard. But if we haven't been trained in some way to positively act on that, such as you can with mindfulness practice, then we're kind of caught up in these various things that can become addictions or at least problematic to a equanimous lifestyle, having equanimity.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, how does it work?
Well, let me give, this is a really good place to insert a definition of mindfulness, because we talked about mindset as opposed to mindfulness, but just to really make it clear to everyone, and I don't want any mystery here, and the reason I wrote this book is because this was so instrumental to me. Please, if you're looking for something, then I'd like to, everyone needs to try it out for themselves and see if it works for them. If you have some practice that helps keep you more centered and more able to deal with life's ups and downs with peace and calm, then by all means keep it up or pick up that practice again. But mindfulness practice specifically is a specific way, form of mental training, and it's a particular kind of awareness or attention that you bring to your daily activities. Now together, this brings two results that we have touched on a little bit already. One is reductions in reactivity. And we've already talked about how much of our day is just reacting to this and that without any kind of a filter, just a bad result. And it also leads to the cultivation of positive brain states, which we've also talked about or touched on in this program, because you're always so good, Margot, at bringing all the good stuff up first. That's really great. So wait, where was the question then?
So how does it work? What do we do?
Oh, so how it works. Okay. So these two parts is a specific form of mental training. And that means that what we're doing with mindfulness training is we're learning and training ourselves how not to be reactive. So I bet many people here watching this today have thought, well, I'll just try this meditation thing. And then they sit down to be quiet and their mind's just all over the place. And they say, I just cannot do this thing. But guess what? The minute you have noticed that your mind has wandered, you're actually doing the practice. Because mindfulness practice is becoming aware of our habits of thinking and training ourselves out of reactivity. So you spend a little bit of formal practice time every day practicing non-reactivity. Now this then gives you the playing field for moving into the rest of your day. So you get up from your few minutes of formal practice, not following every thought, and you learn that things that you're reacting to throughout the day, there's that space is created there again, so you can make a more skillful choice. So that's the umbrella of how it works. And I go through the Mindful Vegan is a 30-day plan, as you know, where I actually teach how to do the formal practice. Day 1 is 1 minute, day 2 is 2 minutes. And to train your mind out of reactivity, you simply sit down, close your eyes, check in with an anchor point, which is at the breath, because the breath takes place in the present moment. It's not in the past or the future. It's right here, right now. So immediately you pulled yourself out of all this wandering state. And you set the intention of being still and returning your attention to the anchor point as many times as it takes, whether it's 10, 20, or 2,000 during your time when you're doing formal practice. This strengthens an avenue in the brain for taking that pause between reacting to something and taking the actions that reactivity are, and being able to be still and make a better choice. So increasingly, this becomes apparent to you throughout the day. It's a direct result, it's dose respondent. The better you are able to be committed to some formal practice time, the better it translates. Now, I didn't say the better you are at controlling your mind. That's not what you're doing. You're returning your attention over and over again. That's what the practice is. So if you have had trouble controlling your mind in meditation in the past, you're doing it right.
Right.
You're aware of it. You are aware of it.
Right. You know what? That's such a relief to hear, because when I started to meditate, when I began meditating, I was not able to do it at all. In fact, it was exactly the experience that you're talking about. And so then I tried having a piece of paper and a pen beside me, because these thoughts would come into my head that, oh, I've got to write this down. So I started writing things down and then bringing myself back. And then I thought, well, that can't be right. So I tried to eliminate the paper and the pen and continue with just the bringing myself back. But I wanted to ask you about time. You know, how much time does one really need to spend in this state every day to get a benefit? I know that in the
formal practice, you mean?
In the formal practice, like in the Mindful Vegan, of course, you go through, it's sort of increasing time daily. But, at the end of all of that, to move forward beyond the book, how much time each day does somebody need to put into this? And the other part of that question is, if people feel like it's infringing on the rest of their day, what do they do?
Great questions. For one thing, about amount of practice, each of us has a different degree of mindfulness naturally. Some people are simply more aware of their actions and their thoughts throughout the course of the day. So it may be a little easier for them to actually invest a little bit less time to be able to feel the benefits. Some people, it's not like a prescription. Well, prescriptions, as you know, are based on the individual human body. Right, so you go to the doctor, get a prescription, they usually will look at the rest of your physiology and give you a dose that is connected with that.
Right.
So it's not unreasonable to say that between 10 and 20 minutes a day would be a really good foundation. And at the same time, so I'm going to finish that up, is for myself, what I have found that the benefits to my life in so many realms, not just the food realm, which was my entry point, but in relationships, reactivity, with a family, with friends, with coworkers, with our way of getting our reactivity throughout the day, whether it's anger or frustration. You learn new ways to navigate that so that your sense of peace and happiness is less perturbed. And to me, that is priceless. That is priceless. So for going on to the next part of your question is, I don't have time for it. And that people will come to me with complaints like, I can't stop mindless snacking. I can't get myself exercising. I'm having trouble with my XYZ, my husband, and all these problems. And I say, well, they're all end up being reactivity. They're all in the realm of reactivity. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't tell them how to change their behaviors. I say, this will help you find your way through and navigate these situations from a more authentic and centered place. So to then again say, I have all these problems. Oh, here you have given me a prescriptive that will really help me with it, but I don't have time for it. So how can I have help with my problems? So that's my answer to that. If you want the benefits that this brings, it overrides the argument of time because the benefits are so substantial. And let me give you an example. Would you have time for a quick example?
Yes, absolutely.
And this was just posted by yesterday on Facebook by a reader who said she's on day 9. As you know, it's a 30-day plan. So she has started to learn a technique called STOP that I teach on day 8 or 9 in the Mindful Vegan. And she was in the course of the day, and she had this craving for pizza that has repeatedly come up for her. Maybe some viewers can relate to that, and maybe you can fill in the pizza blank with something else. But it would present it to her, and she said, here's what I used to do. I would either go ahead and indulge and feel bad about it all day, or I would fight it for hours and then just feel really bad. And then the next day I might do it anyway. Or I'd say, okay, I don't want to eat the cheese, so I'll have them leave the cheese off. So maybe she's trying to rationalize and kind of do a replacement food.
Right.
And she thought, wait a minute, what if I try this stop plan? Now, granted, given she's only on day 8 or 9, which she has worked up to doing 9 minutes of practice a day. That's all she's practiced. Day
Right.
1 minute, day 2 2 minutes. And even if she hasn't put in a little extra time, that's pretty early on to get some result. And it came into her mind, what if I try this stop thing? So she pulled her car over and she actually implemented it. And within seconds, the craving had dissolved because of way this practice gets under the surface of reactivity. So her urge for this pizza was a reactivity to whatever the stress that had come into her, whether it was emotional reactivity or any kind of load of that would compel you to take comfort in an old friend like that.
Right.
She found a new way to navigate the craving that emerged from that gave her enormous freedom. And she said, you know, those minutes are the best minutes of my day. And I now know why. I now know why you titled the first chapter Freedom.
Right. Isn't that extraordinary? That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very exciting to me to see that someone had just came forward and spoke out about how the tools just worked so quickly, and she didn't have to believe anything, or, you know, it's non-religious, it's sectarian, so you don't have to, it's very based on what's going on in your brain.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Lani, there's more than one kind of meditation. Obviously, this is mindful meditation.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, and I've expressed my, my experiences around other kinds of meditation. For example, when I go for a run, I find that my breath, focusing on my breath, and the rhythm of my feet hitting the ground puts me into a meditative state, and I find it really. In part, a big part of why I love to run, it gets me centered. And I talked to you about, when I'm shoveling up my horse's stalls.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Can you just touch on that, these other forms of meditation and how they play into all of this and how they help?
Yes. Actually, what you have just given is 2 beautiful examples of, if you remember, the definition of mindfulness was a specific form of mental training. And second was a particular kind of awareness you bring to your daily activities that cultivates positive brain states. So with these 2 examples of your running and the shoveling in the stall, the way you describe it to me is you're being very present with it. With the running, you're feeling every footstep and you're aware of the breath. So there's probably less wandering mind taking place. You're coming right into what's happening right now, correct?
Right. Absolutely.
And the same thing with the shoveling. You're tuned into your body, doing the activity, the muscle workload, how your body works ergonomically. This is the perfect example of mindful living, being present with what we're doing, as opposed to what the research says is that most of the time, at least half of our day is spent in this wandering mind state that we've already talked about during this time together, where you are just, any thought that comes down the pike, you're hijacked by it and you get lost in the stories around them. Usually regretting or thinking about or ruminating about something about yesterday or what-ifing about tomorrow, and they pull you away from this centered experience that you were having with shoveling and running. And this same presence can be brought to every single activity what you're doing during the day. And that's what you're seeking to do, whether it's doing the dishes, whether it's going into the cupboard to find something, where it's being in the garage and tripping over a shoe and thinking, our reaction is, ugh. But
Right.
what if we brought the attentiveness to that, just as we do with our formal practice, as you do with your running, shoe and way, move shoe, noticing the reactivity. The more connected you are, that's present moment experience. And this opens up those positive states for us. So that, I wanted to touch on that experience about living more mindfully present through every activity during the day. Other kinds of mindfulness meditation practice, I actually started another practice when I first became vegetarian 45 years ago. I was doing a mantra-based practice, meditation practice. And many people do that, like TM is a mantra-based practice where you find a word or a phrase and repeat over and over again. And these are very helpful for stress management, and for building up our concentration and our ability to concentrate on what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. And I say, if this is something that's beneficial to you and you have been doing it, continuing it, if you drop the practice, pick it up again. The extra leg that mindfulness meditation brings to the table is through the breath, you learn the concentration, but in a different way because it's concentrated in the present. It's not something in your imagination like a number or a word that can kind of pull you away from being right here, right now. And also in the next stages of mindfulness practice, which is called Vipassana, where you are actually start to become aware of your body in space, become aware of all the sensations in your body, what emotions feel like, how thoughts are coming and going. And by being present with that, you will learn to be present with all these changing, all the vicissitudes of life throughout the day, just as you would when you're sitting in formal practice. So you start to gain a sense of presence and insight into our reactivity once again and why we're doing what we're doing without getting to the psychology of it. You actually get down to the basics of navigating life with more equanimity. Does that help?
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lani. You know, we're coming toward the end of our time together, and I just have one more question, briefly. Can you tell us who benefits
From these practices?
Yeah. Is there anybody, I guess, anybody who wouldn't benefit?
Oh, who wouldn't? Not that I know of. I cannot see why. And actually, we see an explosion in the media now of mindfulness practice. There's more and more books out. There's a little bit of mindfulness going on. You might, like mindfulness to get ahead, mindfulness to get a better job. Those are like acquisitional. And I'm more interested in presence. Because here's the thing, Margot, and what your question inspires in me, because when you said that, who benefits? And my interpretation was, well, not only you, but everyone around you, because as you are less reactive, think about it. Everyone in our lives that we, especially long-standing relationships, whether it's family or spouse or workplace, we get these developed relationships that we go into conversations with a position, right? Or I know what they're going to say, or I know how they're going to come off, and we get, it becomes very positional instead of being in present in time. So it benefits you and it benefits everyone around you because the less reactive you are, you open up a space for them to be non-reactive. Now, everyone in the world can stand to benefit from this. And I want to tag on to that, something you already brought up. If you find that simply sitting still is not your cup of tea right now, you can do the example of what Margot has just described, which is moving meditation. And I have a section for that in the book too called walking meditation. There's mindful movement in terms of yoga, tai chi, qigong. These all are designed to cultivate connection and being present. You know how when you're in yoga class and you're in a position and you go, oh, I just don't know if I can take this anymore, but you stay steady, right? You hold steady. You can transfer that to life too. So there are lots of ways to kind of reach into this practice.
That's awesome. Lani, thank you so much. Now you have, I understand, a gift for our listeners. Could you?
Yeah, I've got a whole slew of them actually. So on the link that Margot is going to post for you, I have first my publisher has very generously put together, it's a 40-page download of the manuscript of The Mindful Vegan. So you can kind of dive into the introduction, find out what the benefits are, get a little start on how the practice works, and see if that inspires you to take it a step further. Also, with the 30-day plan, I really wanted people to get started and dive in and not just think, this is a great idea. Maybe I'll do that someday. And that's why I set it up as a 30-day plan. Day one, here's 1 minute. Here's how you can get going. And I thought, how else can I facilitate action on this? So I made 30 audios, one to go with each day. And those are downloadable for free on my website. And it tells you in resources in here where to get them. But on the gift page, I put the first 4 days already. So you just can get those and get a feel for them. They're not required, but anything that helps you. If you're a person that likes to have a little bit of a lead activity, then these are perfect for you.
Lani, thank you so much. That's just fantastic. It was great talking with you today. You're just delightful to
Well,
such
always
a
a pleasure.
wealth
Thank you,
of
Margot.
knowledge. Thank you so much, Lani. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye for now.